Okay, so today we have Penn Senator 10-0 conventional reel. First place I normally start is the right side plate. So first I'll start with removing the handle. I like to back the drag knob up just to evenly bring the handle off. No, there's a washer here that sits just on top between the drag knob and the handle. I'm going to drop the drag stack out. See, yeah, so I haven't replaced these yet. I did clean the metal drag washers, but did not replace the fiber drag washers yet. Oh, there's a excuse me, there's a little ring that sits on top of the drag stack, and that's what meets the drag knob. Okay, so I'll loosen this side plate screws up on the right side. Now, one thing you'll notice is on for the real foot or the real seat, the screws on one side are longer than on the other side. You notice how thick this is versus how thick or how thin this one is. It's a pretty simple reel to work on, but with any reels, you still want to use caution and pull the schematics if you need to. Forgot one screw up here. Just come straight off. I'll pop these screws out and I'll pull that harness out in a sec. This is the rest of the drag stack. So no, these are the real foot screws. A little bit shorter than the right side plate screws, but for the left side, the foot screws are shorter than the right side. There's a spool. Nothing comes off besides the bearing for the left side, and the bearing for the right side is still inside here. You can see it right there. So we'll set and dispose this brace out for the harness. Set that aside as well. Then we'll go ahead and remove the left side plate. All the screws for the post are the same on both sides, so there's no real confusion there. And this left side plate, the clicker assembly does not come off. It's built into the plate. Pull this harness out. That comes out. These stay attached. You can obviously purchase new ones, open this up with some sort of pliers, and then squeeze them back together to lock it in place. Let me go ahead and get rid of these pieces. And I'll pull the reel stand apart for you as well, so you can see how that works. Use a wrench to pull this off. There's some washers on here that sit between the nut and the stand. Here's the left side stand screw, and here is the right side stand screw. You see the difference is just a millimeter, or a few millimeters or so. So just be cognizant or aware of that when you're putting the reel back together. So now on to the business end of this. An easy way of getting this out is getting the beauty ring off, is to balance this in the middle. And there is a way of doing it. Balance it there, tilt from the bottom side up, push up slightly as you tilt, and it comes right off. Same way for you to put it on as well. Let's go to remove the meat and potatoes of this reel, which is the working area, or the working end. Two of these screws are slotted and two are not. Are fully threaded and two are not. Notice I press my hand against the jack to ensure nothing kind of shoots out on me. Things still shoot out either way, so just be careful as you pull it out. There's not a whole lot in here besides the dog that will come off, and I'll show you where that sits. The two slotted spoon, the two not fully threaded screws go in through where the springs are at. So in this hole, and then come up through here like that. I'll show you where the dog sits. I'll pull out the pinion, and we'll pop this right side bearing off. So to go ahead and remove this jack plate, we're going to make sure that the spool is engaged. It helps in the removal process, also in the process of putting it back on. So the dog sits here on one of the screws, and that may be the wrong way, it doesn't matter, I'm just showing you where it goes. And this spring sits in here. Let me get that for you, I'm on the wrong side. Dog sits here, the spring sits here, and that's basically how it works. Just like that. Let's go ahead and pull off the eccentric. And for this I'll use a pen tool to remove that nut. Hold on to the spring just so it doesn't pop out on you. It usually doesn't, but just in case. Push down and it comes right out. That's how it sits inside there. And the final piece is the main gear on the bridge. And we'll pull this sleeve off that protects the gearing from the main gear. This usually kind of have to work up gently so as not to damage it. When you get a little way up, you can certainly pull it up by using force on all sides, or at least 3 points of the washer. I'm going to work it up. And they're not always tight, but somewhere. So this is the main gear, cleaned already. And to remove this gearing off the post, take something like a little small blunt nail or a pin and knock this pin out. So I'll show you what I do here with this. Just take it this way, and I may not be able to do this on camera, but I'll try. And I'll use a hammer, just knock this kind of out of there. Okay, there's the pin coming out. You can either pull it or just gently take pliers and work it out the rest of the way. And I like doing it this way versus pushing it all the way out with a hammer, because sometimes you can shoot and you can lose it. There you go. That's essentially how you break down a Penn Senator 10-0 conventional reel. Okay, so let's get started reassembling the Penn Senator 10-0. Just put together these the bracket, and again these kind of go on counterclockwise to tighten the bottom or top. We'll leave this off for now because we need to put this onto the reel, and it's a little tricky if you try to put both things on. Next I'll go to the reel foot, and what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to attach this to the left side plate. Okay, next I'll take one of these lugs and get it set in place. Then I'll take the harness lug and get that set in there. Alright, so next what I'll do is I'll stick in the left side bearing, like so. I'll grease the click dog assembly, and I'll also oil this bearing. Not too much. Just use my finger and spin it. All I'm trying to do is work the oil into the bearing. Okay, so for the reel foot or the reel stand, as I said before, these are the shorter screws, but on one side, which on this thinner side, the screws are shorter. So if you were to put them in incorrectly, there's two things you would notice. First would be that the screw sticks out of this hole, so it'd be sticking out too far. And the second is that if you put the shortest or the longer screws over here and did not notice that they were sticking out too far, when you went to assemble the right side and use this for the reel stand, it would not fit. It wouldn't reach the stand itself. And notice that these are just pretty much flush with the stand itself. I'll go ahead and grease the click dog assembly. I actually like to grease this pretty well because it is even the outside of the ring, because it gets in a lot of contact with water or salt water. So I try to be pretty liberal with the greasing of this. Before I go any further, I'm going to stick the screws into the stand, just to kind of have them out of the way. They have a square end to them that fits into the slot on the stand, and it kind of locks it in place. Remember I said you have to put these washers on before screwing down the bolt into the stand. The base screw is the thinner screw. Stand these up if I can. And the thicker screw goes above this plate. So now we can move on to the right side. I'll stick the bearing back into the left side plate. I'll set this to the side and stick the spool in there and spin it a little bit just to kind of get the bearing to receive some of that oil that I put in there. Okay, so we'll set this to the side. And one of the things we're going to replace on this, obviously, like I said before in the previous video, is the drag stack, but we're also going to replace the washer on the bridge. So this is the old washer. It has some indentations in there. Obviously it's just a little bit worn. It can still be used, but I prefer to go ahead and get it replaced. So we can go ahead and get the excuse me, gear back onto the sleeve or onto the bridge, and I'm going to brush these lightly, everything lightly with grease, as well as this post. I don't grease these because obviously the dog will be coming in contact with this, and we don't want to add to any possible slipping. I will liberally grease the post. This is the one thing that gets seized up or corroded or frozen with lack of maintenance. So we're going to stick that back on. Now we're going to take this pin that we took out, and I'm going to leave you for a sec so I can push this back into the slot so we can lock it in place. Okay, that should be good. Yeah, it's in there nice and flush. Now we have a working bridge again. Alright, so next what I'm going to do is jump around a little bit, and I'll stick the lever in with all these parts. I'm going to grease them for protection and for smooth operation. I like to get this in pretty early on because it's actually one of the tougher parts to put in for me. So, and the way I do it is I'll set the spring in between the two of the nodes there. Then I flip it over and I take the lever itself and I just rest it where I can feel it kind of catch. Then lock this down all the way, or not all the way, but you know, enough to get a grip. Then I'll balance this off in the middle. We'll flip that around. balance in the middle there. Hold it. But again, you see you don't really have to hold it, but it will pop on you. So now it's tightened, or it's tightened, so we're going to remove that. And all we're trying to do is get this into a position where we can actually flip this over and have the handle be the proper way, like that. And then lock it in place. I'm going to stick some grease in there as well. Again, these things kind of just stick on you because the water gets in. Alright, so that's that. So I'll go ahead and grease the spring now. So we have that done. Okay, so now we're going to finish up the bridge assembly. Then we'll work on getting the pinion and the yoke and jack put together or put onto the right side plate. Make sure we put our sleeve on, or our washer on. Set that down. And we're going to do the drag stack after we assemble the reel on this one, because there's a slot here where you can stick the drag stack through. Alright, so let's get the right side excuse me, put together. Make sure we put the bearing in before we do anything else, because you won't be able to get to it. Put a light amount of Real X oil on there. Drop it in place. And this will move around a little bit when you're trying to put everything together. When everything's set, it'll be set as well. Sticking the springs in so I can put the yoke on. We'll grease the yoke up. And we'll definitely want to pay attention to right here, because that's where the pinion gear sits. So I'll take the yoke, stick it in there, make sure it's facing this way, away from the where the main gear will go. Then we're going to take our jack plate after I grease it up and get that assembled as well. What you see here is just discoloration, but it's smooth and still usable. Stick a little bit of grease under here, which is where the jack plate is going to go. I want to ensure smooth operation on that. So the way I do this is I just gently press down on the pinion gear. Make sure this is engaged into set or into not in free spool. Then gently go like that. And it should set in place. Now what we have to worry about here is the dog going into here when we put the main gear in. Let's go ahead and get this main gear set in place. The way I do it is I start this way, push down gently on the push down gently on the yoke and pinion and slowly rotate it. I'll stop right here and get the dog set and it'll fit like this, not like this. So you want that in here like this. I'll take one of the threaded or fully threaded screws, stick it through so it has some resistance. And before I roll it over, I'm going to ensure that it gets all the way down inside so that the dog is being engaged. Like I said, it's a little tricky, but if you have a better way of doing it, please let me know. We'll start over. Let's do that again. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's difficult. And I don't have, there's no real reason why it is. Some days are good, some days are bad. Just checking the dog to make sure it's getting out of the way. Okay. It's also a little more difficult doing things on camera. Okay. It's set in place. I'm going to rotate this over and then I'm going to push the dog out of the way to get it to set under or set in place so I can engage the dog feature or the anti-reverse feature. It looks like we've done that. Just takes a little bit of playing with. I'm going to screw this down to kind of keep it in place, and we'll test it out with just doing this. That works. That doesn't work. So we may have missed it somehow, and we shouldn't have. Oh, we didn't miss it. There we go. That's good. Okay, so next what I'll do is I'll take the screw that's not threaded fully, stick that through the spring into the bridge and lightly screw that down. 'Cause sometimes you have to play with these things to get them set. Not fully threaded through the springs. And don't be alarmed with that bearing being kind of out of place. Before we tighten this down, we're going to fix that, make sure it's set. There we go. Then we'll tighten this down. We'll take, I'm going to drop the lever into free spool to lock the bearing into place so it doesn't shift around so much. Then I'll tighten the screws down. Alright, so next what we're going to do is I'm going to get the rest of the reel assembled. We're going to get the beater rings put on here, and then we're going to put everything onto the other side of the spool. So let's go ahead and get the rings kind of set in place. As I told you before, to get this one on, to get the side beauty ring on the right side, balance the lever, and you can kind of work it on there at an angle, just like that. So I'll do the same thing I did with the other side. I'm going to remove one of those posts just so I can secure this side. There we go. That's pretty much it. But we're going to finish it up. The rest is just putting stuff together. So what I like to do here now is I like to just go ahead and get everything set in place together. And gently tighten some of these down. Let's get the main lug here so we can get that set in place. Then we'll go to this side and get the other harness lug, get that set in. We're pretty much going to be done with this reel. So now that brings us to the 3 longer stand screws. Go ahead and tighten this all down after I get these screws set in place. And then we just work on the drag stack and on the handle. And that will be pretty much the entire reel. Okay, so let's tighten all these down. Okay. Now it's in gear. We're gonna go ahead and put in free spool just to get those bearings to receive the oil. Looks good. It's a really nice reel. I love these oil reels. Alright, so let's go ahead and work in the drag stack. The layout is going to be like this. Fiber washer, metal keyed washer, fiber washer, I'm sorry, metal aired washer, yeah, metal keyed washer, and then metal aired washer, and just repeating itself all the way through. You'll have this one thicker washer on top. I put it like this. You can certainly put it like that if you want. I like this way better because I feel like it adds the potential for more drag if you need it. For these washers, what I'm going to use is drag grease on them. Just kind of helps keep them supple. It's the best word I can use. Even though they're pretty thick and rigid. Just, oh, let me get this in. Drop it into place. Remove this one. Put in a keyed washer. Next, Next, fiber washer. And I don't put too much of the cow's dry grease on here because if you do, it's just kind of a waste. Just oozes out on the side. I'm using my gloved hand to apply the grease because I really don't want the grease on my fingers. I'll still get some, of course, but almost done. That's the last one. So just place a drag, and as I said before, I like to set this final thicker washer in the concave format. I'm just going to do the convex format versus concave. Personal preference. I'm looking for this ring, this spacer right here is what I was looking for. Set the spacer on top, don't forget that. Then we can work on putting the drag knob and the handle on. I'll put the spooling gear and hold I'll put the reeling gear and hold the spool to facilitate getting the drag knob on. There we go. And now we'll put the handle on. Don't forget the washer that came, or that you removed from here, from the top, before you lock down the handle.